with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, we have quite a room full tonight. Please call the roll.
For the regular city council meeting of October 9th, Monica Duran,
Here.
Denise Hoppy,
Present.
Zachary Urban,
Present.
George Pond,
Present.
Christy Davis,
Here.
Tim Fitzgerald,
Here.
Larry Matthews,
Here.
Genevieve Wooden.
Present.
Madam Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Council, have any changes to the minutes of the council study notes or September 18th? If there are no changes, and I don't see any, then they do stand approved as presented. We're going to move right into proclamations and ceremonies. We have both a presentation to our Parks and Recreation Department as well as a Manufacturing Day proclamation. And I'm going to start with that, and I will call to the microphone when I go down there. Allie Resick is the Director of Key Initiations from Manufacturer's Edge. I'll read the proclamation and then I would love it. Well, no, why don't you go ahead and describe what Manufacturing Day is all about, and then I can read it.
Thank you. Manufacturing Day is celebrated all across the United States. Here in Colorado, Manufacturer's Edge, which is a member of the Manufacturing Extension Partnership under the Department of Commerce, has taken on the ability to celebrate as many Manufacturing Day events as we can. And this is one of them. And thank you so much for proclaiming Manufacturing Day here in Wheat Ridge today.
Which you're about to do. Whereas Wheat Ridge is an innovation economy with manufacturing playing a critical role in the diverse climate of Wheat Ridge, and whereas Wheat Ridge is a place where invention thrives, making the community one of the nation's top regions for business and careers and a great place for long-term investment, and whereas Jefferson County, Colorado, has more than 18,655 employees working in manufacturing companies producing everything from Department of Defense products to, and whereas manufacturing contributes to the economic health of Wheat Ridge and raise awareness of high-skilled career opportunities in manufacturing, and whereas the city appreciates manufacturing that makes things happen. Now, therefore, I, Joyce J., Mayor, and the Council in the City of Wheat Ridge do hereby proclaim October 6, 2017 as Manufacturing Day. Thank you so much.
Regional Director for Manufacturer's Edge, America. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now I'm going to call up Parks and Recreation. Oh, are you going to do the? Are you going to do it? Are you going to do it?
I'm going to do it.
You get the tall one.
Thank you, Mayor. Very honored to be part of the gold medal presentation this evening for our Parks and Recreation Department. I have the honor of introducing Rod Tarullo. He is the Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Golden. Rod is, where are you? There he is. Rod is the gold medal judge liaison. He oversees the judges panel of the 5 esteemed professionals on behalf of the National Recreation and Park Association and the American Academy of Park and Recreation Administration. He has been involved in the program since 2001 and a judge or judge's liaison to the program since 2011. Rod, you want to come up and help present the gold medal?
Thank you, Mr. Goff. Well, Madam Mayor and members of council, as Mr. Goff mentioned, my name's Rod Tarullo, and I am here this evening representing the American Academy for Parks and Recreation Administration and the National Recreation and Parks Association to present the City of Wheat Ridge with a Class 4 finalist award for the National Gold Medal Award program. The National Gold Medal Award is the most coveted award in the Parks and Recreation profession, honoring agencies and communities throughout the United States that exceed industry practices and establish a higher standard for delivering public park and recreation services. Gold medal finalist winners exhibit positive impacts to their communities, show measurable benefits, use creative and innovative approaches to local challenges, and address their community needs through the involvement of citizens, staff, and elected officials in their planning processes. Wheat Ridge Parks and Recreation has demonstrated excellence in these areas over the last several years. Your 2016 CAPRA accreditation also shows your commitment to best practices within the industry. We applaud and congratulate the City of Wheat Ridge for your outstanding accomplishments. Wheat Ridge Parks and Recreation truly represents the best of the best. Your community competes in a Class 4 category for this award, which represents agencies serving populations of 30,000 to 75,000. Since the inception of the awards program 52 years ago, this Class 4 category has had only 204 agencies named gold medal finalists. The City of Wheat Ridge has established its rightful place in the upper echelon of 8,000 public parks and recreation agencies across the nation. As part of the gold medal process, you were asked to prepare a brief video on your Parks and Recreation Department. Can we watch it together right now? Let's do that.
Before you start, let's make sure, can you get the camera lights off, please, before we start, so we don't miss anything?
Wheat Ridge is unique because even though we're growing and changing and expanding, we still seem to maintain that small town charm. Our parks and recreation areas are really the hub, almost like a main street for our citizens.
One of the essentials of community is having gathering places. They provide great places for families to have encounters with one another, for people to enjoy running, walking, and the natural world.
Each time I come through the line, it matters not who I get, I'm always acknowledged, smile, how are you? They know me by name, they know what I'm doing, and it just feels like home when I walk in here.
There's a wide variety of natural spaces and groomed spaces and sports fields and parks. It's really a nice diversity.
This year, we went through the branding process. Our goal was to really identify what makes Wheat Ridge Parks and Recreation unique. And to do that, we engaged the community, engaged the patrons. Each group talked about how the Wheat Ridge Recreation Center, the Active Adult Center, our parks, our Greenbelt is all about connections. It's about connecting with friends, connecting with people, connecting with family. It really boils down to our roots. What are we rooted in? Our brand is rooted in fun because fun is really the foundation of what we're doing.
Our parks, they're neighborhood gems where generations exchange stories and create new memories. We listen to the citizens right here in Discovery Park, an amazing park. The name Discovery Park was voted by the grade 2 class in Prospect Valley, less than a mile away from here.
Or on the Wheat Ridge Greenbelt. In order to maintain this area, I've been working with Institute for Environmental Solutions, and they've helped me fund and help run a program of the tree stewards.
I enjoy it for the people and the relationships, especially working with an older adult population. I feel like they really come with a different sense of purpose, and they really help bring energy to our building. We utilize about 60 volunteers in a variety of positions here. They help us operate our van trip program. They'll help do special events at the center. So a lot of different programs that we wouldn't be able to operate without the assistance of volunteers to really help the center run and to be able to maintain the programs that we offer.
Well, first of all, I love the facility. It's so well maintained. Of course, the instructors are amazing.
Another thing we offer is the Recreation Discount Program. This program was specifically designed to help families and individuals that are in financial hardship to be able to enjoy our programs and classes that we offer.
Our population at Everett, 70% of them qualify for free reduced lunch. And what that means is that many of our families don't have the resources beyond daily expenses, and because we're right across from the rec center, one of the things that we're trying to do as a healthy school in Jeffco is provide our kids opportunities to have access to not only our school facilities, but also the rec center. So we approached the rec center about this need to give our students access at a discounted cost, so that our students can earn these passes through our positive behavior program, as well as coming to our after school and morning programs. So they actually can earn for every 6 times that they're in their school doing something, extracurricular, they receive a free rec pass.
At Local Works, we're very pleased that we've had innovative partnerships with the city to use the green spaces around our town for running, for yoga, for all sorts of classes, and lots of fun. The Criterium and Brewfest, Rich Fest, Trunk or Treat, and the holiday celebration, as well as many smaller events that connect people with restaurants, biking, running, and active lifestyle in the community.
Our main goal really is simple: connecting people to parks and play.
Wheat Ridge Parks and Recreation is unique because of our ability to provide professional, community-oriented services that make lasting connections.
This is a great place for me to connect with people that I've never met, that I enjoy their presence in a class or walking around the track. So as far as connecting people, I think that is one of the #1 things that I personally have experienced here.
Yeah, I ride my bike in the parks. I walk in the parks. I go to the recreation center. This is like an extension of my home.
Strengthening our community, bringing people together, and maintaining our small town roots.
This award goes to your entire city, each and every citizen of Wheat Ridge, you, the elected officials, and especially your talented professional staff. Joyce Manwaring, Director of Parks and Recreation, Julie Brisson, Recreation and Facilities Manager, Rick Murray, Parks, Forestry, and Open Space Manager, and Matt Anderson, Parks and Recreation Analyst, are here this evening representing your entire Parks and Recreation staff. Your staff have demonstrated significant success with the design and delivery of superior services to your community. Mayor Jay, would you kindly join staff on behalf of the elected officials and citizens of Wheat Ridge for the presentation of the plaque? If you could all come over here. This Class 4 finalist plaque was presented to the Wheat Ridge Parks and Recreation Department on September 25th at the 2017 National Conference for Parks and Recreation in New Orleans. We're delighted to be a part of the local acknowledgement of this prestigious award. Can you present that to you?
Wow, it's heavy.
Mayor, on behalf of the American Academy for Parks, Recreation Administration, the National Recreation and Parks Association, and award sponsor Musco Lighting, we congratulate you on your success and present you with this 2017 Class 4 National Gold Medal Award finalist plaque. Congratulations to you and the entire city of Wheat Ridge, Colorado.
I am very, very proud of our Parks and Recreation Department. They have done a fabulous job ever since I've than I can remember. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank Rod for coming tonight and also for all of his contributions to our profession and his volunteer work with the National Park and Recreation Association. It's very much appreciated. Thank you, Rod. Thank you. So I do want to say that we are honored to be a finalist, and we're so proud that we could, that the City of Wheat Ridge has received this recognition. So I want to thank Mayor and elected council, elected officials, Patrick, fellow department heads for all your support. We don't do this by ourselves, that's for sure. And then I also want to thank, of course, all the Parks and Recreation Department employees, full-time and part-time, that come out every day and do their jobs in such a great way to provide these services and programs for our citizens. And last but not least, I want to thank the citizens of Wheat Ridge that participate and use our parks. They make us a better department. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I think it'd be kind of nice to have that every business meeting. That's pretty sensational. That is quite an award. Did you hear that category between 30,000 and was it 75? So we competed with some cities twice the size of ours. So I'm particularly proud of our city and our agency. Okay, citizens' right to speak. We'll start with matters that are not on the agenda. And we have some people signed up. Dorothy Archer, followed by Bob Beazell, or Beasel, not sure on the pronunciation of that.
My name is Dorothy Archer, 3640 Marshall Street, Wheat Ridge. Good evening, Mayor Jay, council, staff, and citizens. I am addressing the issue that is taking place on November 20th in the study session. This issue takes place after the city council meeting, I am assuming. Can someone correct me on that if I'm wrong? That's a city council night, yet we're doing a study session also?
No, November 20th is a regular business meeting. Dorothy, it's a regular business meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, it's a regular study session that evening, so it will be a study session item.
Okay, so it will be the study session?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure I was right on that issue. And I would like at this time to know who will be responsible or taking the initiative to writing an article about this issue that is going to take place. I think it needs to be in all three of our newspapers out of fairness to homeowners and all the citizens in Wheat Ridge. I think it's very big. I know your issue on addressing the small homes in the back of our homes. You did have an article in a paper, and it was well received. You had many, many people showing up from Wheat Ridge to attend that. I'm assuming that you would also want just as many people to attend this session because it involves caring, loving people in this city. East Wheat Ridge is about 3/4 of R2. I would say probably 70% of East Wheat Ridge is R2. We are not in favor of a 35-foot flat roof dwelling right next to our fence. I myself live in an area in R2 in East Wheat Ridge that doesn't even have 5 feet between my property lines on either side. I shudder to think that I have that next door to me. In all fairness to our citizens, I'm asking you and I'm pleading with you to get an article in the paper and make our citizens aware of this issue. It is lasting, it is big, it can be permanent. You need to have more input on people's feelings. Thank you so much for your consideration. Is this issue going to make the papers? Does anybody have that idea? Have you talked about it? Is it going to happen?
I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, I don't know that we can give you any item that becomes large and very vocal.
Okay, does this kind of thing have to be made into a motion or not?
It would not be normally put into an emotion.
Okay.
It would be a discussion as far as the meeting. We always list what occurs at meetings, but there's not usually a motion as to whether to put it in a newspaper.
Okay, because I know you have at least one more issue. There'll be one Gazette coming out, but I think it's too late to do anything for the October issue, but definitely is not too late for Gazette. And I'm not aware of the deadlines for the other two papers. So I'm counting on you all somehow to make our citizens and homeowners aware. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. Bob Brazel, thank you. Oh, it is an R. You must. Hear it enough times.
Brazel,
Brazel.
38,
Blame Larry.
30 Carr Street. I'm going to be brief here, but we've got the ballot question 13, or not 13, ballot question 300, that apparently was kind of overturned or something by some judge or whatever. But this ballot question 300 was voted on by the people of this city, and it passed. I think it's the council's obligation to defend the will of the voters who elected them. Regardless of any personal opinions, you work at your own personal opinions. You work at the will of the people. Therefore, we need to appeal the judge's misinformed opinion. And all meetings and executive sessions should be held in a public setting. Any votes on the matter should be done in a public meeting to uphold the state sunshine laws and in fact and in spirit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brazel. Tom Slattery, Brazel. Razzle dazzle. Razzle dazzle. We got it up here.
Thomas Slattery, 6869 West 32nd Avenue. I'm speaking on the same subject as the previous speaker, and I wish to quote Section 313 of the City Charter, Oath of Office. Every elected officer under this charter, before entering upon the duties of his office, shall take an oath or affirmation of office that he will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States and of the state of Colorado and this charter and the ordinances of the city, and will strive to be responsive to all citizens of the city, and will faithfully perform the duties of his office upon which he is about to enter. I don't think you need to say much more there. I think right now, I may not be a lawyer, but I think we have a situation that is patent nonsense. By the judge's decree, our moderate limitation on TIF is illegal, supposedly, by the laws of Colorado. Yet the more stringent limitation of Littleton in a different judicial district, as I understand it, remains in effect. As I say, this is nonsense. I therefore submit that it is the duty of this city council to uphold the charter of the city and appeal this ruling. Thank you. Also, I would like to support Dorothy Archer in her comments. And again, thank you.
Thank you.
John Clark.
Jesus. Hi, I am John Clark, 4665 Swadley Street, citizen and voter, District 4. I feel like maybe I'm just jumping on the bandwagon now with Bob and Tom. And I wrote this, but I kind of wrote it small. But so anyway, I came here. I did come here to talk about ballot question 300, and I figured I'd come up here and spend my 3 minutes and tell you all why you should fight for the voters of the city. Then I thought, hell, they already know that, and they should defend the voters of this city. So really, why should I waste my time? And Bob and Tom kind of said it pretty well. So, and let's face it, I've been coming up here to this podium for a very long time, and I tell you what I think, then you do whatever the hell you want to anyway. So we rarely agree. So again, why waste my time? So I think instead I'll talk about words. These words came to mind that have been hijacked from the English language lately, and I'm only going to speak to two of them. I thought of three, but I'm only going to speak to two, since the word progress or progressive has been hijacked and destroyed for so long, I don't even want it back. So we can talk about the word sustainable or sustainability and how that word has been hijacked, most recently by the Mayor's Sustainability Committee, and thrown around to describe all kinds of crazy thoughts. Let's face it, a city cannot be sustainable when it doesn't allow any of the male of the species to reside here, such as a rooster. You know, we can't have a rooster in Wheat Ridge. A non-weathered goat or a billy, we can't have a billy. And not only can we not have a male pig, but we can't even have a sow. And the bacon in my freezer is no longer sustainable without a sow and some piglets. And that brings us to the word transparent or transparency. And I've heard that one thrown around enough to make you throw up. But you throw in an election year and you hear people and candidates go on and on about transparency. So let me just say, you are not as transparent as you think you are, or as that you say you are. Claiming to be transparent, just saying the word does not make it so. So if you go into executive session and discuss the legal ramification of ballot question 300, that's understandable. We all understand that. But if you take a vote while in executive session on whether to defend the voters of Wheat Ridge, that is the exact opposite of transparency. That vote should be held right here on this dais and tell us, the voters, why you vote to defend ballot question 300 or not. Otherwise, I should never, ever, ever hear the word transparent from any of you ever again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vivian Voss, who is going to donate her time to our next speaker, our last speaker, Michael Ilo.
Hello, my name is Michael Ilo, and I live in District 3. It's ILLO. I'm kind of glad I'm speaking after John because he brought up some good points about transparency. And that has a little bit to do with what I'd like to talk about. As I recall, back in, I think, April 2016, Councilmember Wooden brought up social media, rules of engagement. I don't know if you guys ever moved forward on talking about that, about how our elected officials need to conduct themselves on social media. I think no one can deny that social media is a huge presence in executive process. Whenever there's a ballot question, thousands of dollars are spent to control or manage social media, to put up social media sites. I know recently there's been some false profiles created just for the sake of promoting candidates. I know there's a lot of mudslinging going on about that, and I think that one of the persons slinging the mud is probably just as guilty as the person that he's slinging the mud at. So I think when you have a social media profile that represents a publicly funded government position or government agency, I don't think it's right for that to be able to be treated the same as a privately funded lobbyist group. I think there should be a difference. A publicly funded agency or a publicly funded official, I think they should be transparent. There shouldn't be censorship. There shouldn't be selective input by people. And I don't know, I mean, I'd like the city attorney to maybe listen to this and take it all in, because just what are the legal ramifications of when you're representing a publicly funded entity and you're banning certain citizens from commenting on that page and you're allowing other citizens to comment on that page. That's more like a privately funded what lobbyists do. Now, there's a lot I could go over, but I don't have a lot of time. There's the city of Wheat Ridge, the Wheat Ridge city treasurer for over a year and a half had 2 profiles. Both of them said Wheat Ridge city treasurer as part of the title of his page. He's blocked people on one of those pages, completely blocked them from seeing any content. On the other page, he censors content by blocking people or banning them from commenting or participating in the page, though they can see the content. And just because somebody has a political enemy, it doesn't give them the right to censor content, in my opinion. Also, when, like as Wooden said back in 2016, this represents when their conduct, especially when they have a government title on their page, this conduct represents the city. And when that person is bullying people, and I'm not understating this word bully. I'm not talking about a 12-year-old who steals lunch money. I'm talking about somebody using superior power, influence to intimidate people to get what he wants. Our city treasurer has been bullying people with his city website, with both of his profiles. And I understand that he just, trying to cover his tracks, I guess, removed this city of Wheat Ridge from one of his profiles. But doesn't stop the fact that for over a year and a half, he's been spreading rumors, and even on the one that he didn't remove that name, he's personally attacked me on that page. I gave him a less than favorable review, and he blocked me immediately and then started slandering me right below my review. And knowing that I cannot defend myself or answer his provocative questions, what's the point of that? That's bullying. He also became president of Citizens for an Inclusive Wheat Ridge. And I understand that Citizens for an Inclusive Wheat Ridge has a hot link to the government website, which it's hot linked to the City of Wheat Ridge website. Look it up. And he even brags about that on the description of the page. So it is a government issue in a way. And as soon as he became president of that, he blocked me off of that page. That used to be an open citizen group, and it started banning members. Well, when I demanded a refund, he started spreading lies about me. I was able to prove that these were lies because I took screenshots of some of the things that contradicted what he was saying. I was concerned with him making inappropriate posts on that page, and I addressed these in a very civil fashion, and he was accusing me of other things, which I never did. I got my refund. Also, I have a neighbor who she's a Lyme disease survivor, and she has a closed brain injury, and he's posted a screenshot on this citizens group that shows her profile picture with her and her mom, her full name, her real name, and a real profile, and it's using it in a derogatory way. And she's asked him twice to take it down, and he won't. And he's using this profile picture to promote two candidates. And neither of the candidates have come forward and said, please take this picture down. I wouldn't want my name associated with that. I understand I'm past my time. And I can come back in a couple weeks and talk more about this issue because it's a pretty big mess right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I don't have anyone else lined up. Was there someone else who wished to speak? I don't have anybody else on this particular list. Okay, with that, we can move on.
Madam Mayor, if you please, I would like to respond to some of the citizens' comments.
That's your privilege.
Thank you. Let me pass this out. If you would pass one down to Janelle. I'm specifically addressing the people that showed up today to talk about our executive session and our upcoming decisions on the lawsuit by Longs Peak. Whereas we're about to adjourn to receive legal advice concerning current litigation, and whereas the litigation concerns a citizens' initiative on TIF as decided through a general city election, and whereas we are not able or not to take any formal action in an executive session, and whereas the citizens have the right to know, for the public record, how we vote on the issue, as they do with any other council business, I hereby move that we temporarily suspend the current council meeting, adjourn to the executive session to discuss the litigation, return to council chambers, and reconvene the meeting to vote through a motion on the direction we will give to the city attorney in regards to the current litigation.
It appears that there are two motions here. Well, I realize that, but there are two actions you would like to both start the executive session, have the discussion and then come back and do an open voting, which that's one. But you're also asking that we basically change the agenda.
Well, I'm not sure how you would do that legally, because the executive session right now is not on the agenda. So maybe it would be adding an item. So yes, there would be two motions there, I guess. But my motion is to do that.
It's number 4 on the agenda. The executive section is on the agenda. So the first motion that I would ask you to make then.
What's number 4 have to do with this? It says that's to cancel a study session.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I may not have that stated correctly because it's just public information right now, because it's not a part of this meeting agenda. So
At the end of our meeting for tonight, this is adjourned to an executive session.
that's not an agenda item. It's after we're closed.
Okay. What you're asking for is that we change the nature of that, that we continue the meeting after the executive session and then adjourn after the public
Because the
vote.
people are here, that we adjourn immediately, and I could live with doing it after the meeting, but discuss the litigation, then come back here and vote on the direction that we give to our attorney so that people can see
All right,
what's going
let's
on.
go back then. Once again, that's 2 items within the motion. Could I ask you to separate those 2 items? In other words,
I'm not sure I'm following you, Mr. Dahl. Have I created a double motion here?
Well, there's really 2 things that probably council needs to decide. You're going to have an executive session, so the question is when? Do you have it in the middle of the meeting and then come back and do the voting, or do you have it at the end of the meeting? That's sort of the first thing to decide. And the second thing to decide, you can do it all in a single motion, I'm fine with that. Second thing to decide is after the executive session, do you return to the open meeting and take any action around that, or do you give me direction on the litigation, as you sometimes do in executive session? I've many times advised you, you can give me that direction in executive session, or you can do it in a public meeting. Doesn't matter to me. So I think the first question to resolve is timing. When will the session take place? You might want to sort of break it into 2 things. When will it take place? And then once you know whether it's happening now or at the end of the meeting, you also should decide whether you're coming back to take a formal vote.
Well, the way I intended my motion to say this, I hereby move that we temporarily suspend the meeting. That would be right now.
That would be right now, I agree.
So you just need a second.
Second.
so you have a motion and a second to, yeah, so we need to go into discussion on this.
Madam Mayor, I wanted to add that the approval of the agenda has not happened yet, so.
I'm aware
so,
of that, but this will change the agenda, so that's why
it is appropriate to do something different, because you haven't sent the agenda.
this would essence change the agenda. We have a motion and a second on the floor. I need discussion on that. Mr. Pond?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the intent of this, at least, to have a discussion on coming back and how we do that. I think we should have that discussion. I do not agree with doing it at this point in the meeting. There's other business inclusive of our budget and people here to talk about that. I would prefer to continue to move on to that and go into executive session as it's indicated on our agenda. And at that point, I'm happy to talk about the second action on this notion, which is coming back into chambers. But I will vote no on this because I do not believe we should leave right now.
Other discussion? Ms. Hoppy?
I agree. As I look out there, I see lots of people who are here to discuss specifically agenda items. I see the Carnation Festival and Local Works here, and so I would prefer that we leave the executive session at the end of the meeting. So that's why I'll be voting no for this one right now.
Ms. Duran?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also see citizens out there who spoke on ballot question 300, and to have them wait till the end of our budget discussion, I feel that that's asking a lot. They're also here to kind of hear what our decision is, and they also want to know. So that's why I second, and that's why I support taking care of this first, coming back. Our budget discussion last Monday was 4 hours. It could, I don't know how long it'll take tonight. So I will be supporting yes, voting yes.
You'll be supporting, okay. Anyone else? Let's have the other, doesn't sound like it. Then please go ahead.
I would just remind us all that I'm sorry?
I was going to ask for the cast of the vote of your motion.
I'd like to have one shot at discussion. Yes, since we already spent almost an hour on this 2 weeks ago in executive session and requested just a few more points of information, I do not foresee that we should be that long in executive session. I don't. So I'm sorry if I'm inconveniencing some of the folks that are here for the budget, but I would like to see this voted on. It's a citywide issue before midnight. Thank you. And voted on here.
If there's no further discussion, we can cast our ballots.
The motion fails 3-5 with council members Wooden, Fitzgerald, Davis, Pond, and Hoppy voting no.
That motion failed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
That being the case, then if there are any other changes to the agenda, then it is approved as it is written. Any other changes?
I just had a question.
Sure.
Was there a second motion separate from this one? No? Okay, thank you.
We can include that at late when we go to the executive session portion. Okay. We are now moving to item number 1, Mr. Pond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to introduce item number 1, resolution number 38, 2017, a public hearing and resolution adopting the city budget and appropriating sums of money to the various funds and spending agencies in the amounts specified for the city of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for the 2018 budget year. And I will forego reading anything. I'm sure there will be a great staff report.
Great staff, is that what you said?
Great staff report.
Thank
Great
you,
staff
Mr.
report.
Pons.
Hold on, this is a hearing, a public.
It's public hearing. Thank you, Mayor.
I'm opening that.
Thank you. We're here this evening to present the 2018 proposed budget to you. As Councilmember Duran mentioned, we did have a study session on this last Monday and had considerable discussion. I have a little bit of a shorter presentation this evening, but still enough for, I think, the public to get a good idea of what is in this proposed budget. So if the cameraman can turn off the lights, please, we'll get started. There we go, thank you. So The city is very honored to receive the Distinguished Budget Award for our budget for the last several years. That we received this reward because our budget document reflects both the guidelines established by the National Advisory Council on State and Local Budgeting and the Government Finance Officers Association Best Practices in Budgeting. The Wheat Ridge City Council's vision really sets the framework for our budget every year. The Wheat Ridge vision, which was just updated by City Council this last year, is Wheat Ridge is a beautiful city and a community for families. Wheat Ridge has great neighborhoods, vibrant commercial centers, and multimodal transportation, and is committed to environmental stewardship. Wheat Ridge residents enjoy an active, healthy lifestyle and hometown feeling and pride. Wheat Ridge, a great place to live. To start off very high level, just a reminder for council and the public, our budget fund structure consists of several different funds. Our largest fund is our general fund, which is our daily operating budget. But then we have 8 different special funds, which we'll touch on briefly this evening. A public art fund, police investigation, open space, municipal court, conservation trust, equipment replacement, crime prevention, and recreation center. Then we also have our capital improvement fund, which is the budget that details our annual capital projects for the year. And then this year, and then also starting, and then full year for next year, we created a new fund. We call it our bond fund or 2E fund. That's the fund that has the bond proceeds in it from our recent temporary half a penny sales tax increase. So again, starting very high level, if you look at the column on the far right, that is the total budget for all funds that I just mentioned. So the proposed expenditures row, which is the 5th row down, shows the total expenditures for all those funds is just over $65 million. And then if you move to the left in that same row, if you take out the 2E fund, which is very large because of the bond proceeds, all other funds minus the 2E fund, our budget is $48 million. And then for the 2E fund by itself, the budget is just over $17 million. So again, just a different view of those different funds. $65 million budget is what's proposed for 2018. The general fund is the largest portion of that budget at 52%. Our new 2E bond fund is the second at 27%. And then our CIP, Capital Improvement Program budget, is 10%. Recreation or open space budget is 5%. Recreation center is 4%. And then the rest of the special revenue funds that are left over are only about 2%. So again, the majority of our budget is in the general fund, which we'll talk about this evening in more detail. Starting with revenues for 2018. In the general fund, we're projecting just over $34 million in revenues. And we're projecting to have on hand at the beginning of next year just over $10 million in our fund balance. So that brings the total available funds next year in the general fund to just under $45 million. The revenues of $34 million, that's a 6% decrease compared to what we're estimating this year. The reason it's such a large decrease is we received a significant amount of revenue this year that was unanticipated from building permit fees, building use tax, and auto use tax revenue, which was received this year due to the hailstorm that was back in May. So when you look at what we actually originally budgeted in 2017 without those unanticipated revenues, we're projecting a total budget, general fund budget revenue increase of about 2.3% over what was originally budgeted in 2017. Our revenues in this pie chart shows that sales and use tax is our largest revenue source for the city. So almost 70%, or exactly 70% is what we're projecting of our revenues in 2018 come from sales and use tax. So it's a very important revenue source for the city. I won't go through all the rest, but I'll just point out again for council and the public that property tax is only 3% of our total revenues. So it is a fairly small revenue source that a lot of people do not realize. So now going into expenditures for the general fund for 2018, we are proposing just over $34 million. And then transferring out of the general fund reserves $2.2 million to our capital improvement program. So a total budget of just over $36 million. This budget is an 8.7% increase compared to this year's 2017 budget. The reason it's fairly large is because in next year's budget we have $1.5 million allocated that we received from insurance proceeds for property that was damaged, city property that was damaged from the May 8th hailstorm. So that's a one-time expense that we won't normally have. So that's a majority of the increase in 2018 is from that. If we pull that out, we're showing about a 4% increase over the 2017 budget. With these revenues that I mentioned earlier in the previous slide and these expenditures, we're projecting to have an ending fund balance at the end of next year of just over $8 million. The unrestricted portion of that fund balance is just over $6 million, which is at an 18.8% reserve. The City Council has a policy that they would maintain a minimum level of 17% in that unrestricted reserve. The restricted fund balance, the difference between the $8 million and the $6 million, includes $1 million, just over $1 million for 3% reserve, which is required by Tabor, which is a state law. We have about just over $200,000, which is dedicated to the city's Channel 8 government channel. Citizens who have Comcast or cable have a small fee on their monthly cable bill, which comes to the city, and we have to keep that money separate to pay for our Channel 8 services. And then we also have $685,000 in the reserves for a loan to the Fruitdale project. General fund expenditures broken down by expense. The police department is our largest department and largest expense right now at 31%. Our parks and recreation and public works are about the same at 15% and 14% respectively. Central charges, which includes our workers' compensation, insurance, property liability, our medical, dental, life insurance coverage, uninsured losses, postage, employee compensation, is all in central charges, which is about 12%. Administrative services, which is all of our internal departments, finance, HR, information technology, purchasing, public information, budget are all in administrative services at 11%. General government is 9%. That includes the city council, city clerk, city treasurer, city manager, and economic development and city attorney's budgets. And community development, 5%, and municipal court is 3% of the general fund budget. And as I mentioned earlier, we created a new fund called the 2E Fund. This is for our bond proceeds that we issued back in May. We received $33 million from our bond sale, which will be paid back with the half-cent temporary sales tax increase. We are projecting expenditures of just over $17 million next year, and that's divided up amongst the four different projects that were part of the ballot question. And we're projecting to generate just over $4 million in new revenues next year from that half a penny sales tax increase, sales and use tax increase. So the four projects that the voters approved to fund include the new hook ramps, new interchange off of I-70 for the Clear Creek Crossing project. We are projecting to spend $9.75 million of that in the 2018 budget. Then also there was $12 million approved for the Wheat Ridge Ward Road G-Line Station area, which is up at 52nd Ward. We're proposing to spend about $2 million of that on public infrastructure that may be needed for some development up at that site. The third project is the Wadsworth Boulevard Widening Project. It's a very large project. The bonds approved $7 million towards this project. We are proposing to spend only about $450,000 of that next year. That's a several-year project, so most of the expenses will happen in the next couple of years after that. Then the fourth and last project from the bonds was the Anderson Park renovation and the Anderson building renovation. We're projecting to spend out of the 2E fund $1.72 million next year. Whoops, the capital improvement program budget is our next largest budget. We are proposing to spend $6.4 million next year, and the three largest areas that we're spending that money on are the Wadsworth reconstruction project, preventative street maintenance, and minor street improvements, and then we have some smaller other programs that I'll talk about briefly. So the major CIP capital improvement program projects for 2018 include, again, the Wadsworth reconstruction project. We're finishing up the environmental assessment that is required as part of that project. We have $2 million budgeted in the CIP budget for that. Preventative street maintenance, which is our annual street maintenance of our streets, our overlay and crack seal and slurry seal of our streets. We have about $2 million budgeted for that. Minor street improvements next year is slotted for improvements at 29th Avenue and Fenton Street, which is in conjunction with the Denver Water Project at the Ashland Reservoir. It's $1.57 million. However, the city's portion of this is $836,000. Denver Water will reimburse the city $411,000 towards this project, and Edgewater will reimburse the city $322,000 towards this project. The next major CIP project is drainage, or our drainage improvements at 26 in Fenton. We're proposing $260,000 for some improvements there. The city's portion, or Edgewater will reimburse the city $171,000 towards that project. Another large project in the CIP budget for next year is municipal facility security upgrades. We brought to council a report several weeks ago, an assessment on the security of our different facilities, the Recreation Center, the City Hall, and the Active Adult Center. They've identified, I think, up to $800,000 of improvements that they really recommend to improve security in these different buildings. We've budgeted $150,000 in next year's budget to start whittling down that list. Next project is a new traffic signal at 32nd and Xenon, which is the entryway into the Applewood Shopping Center off of 32nd Avenue. That's a $145,000 project, but that's going to be reimbursed by the Wheat Ridge Urban Renewal Authority and Regency, who's the owner of the Applewood Shopping Center. So that should provide some better traffic control at that very busy part of 32nd Avenue. Continuing on with other additional CIP projects, we have some improvements to our police department evidence storage facility. A few years ago, we built a new evidence storage facility at the Public Works shops area, and the second floor of that building was not built out at the time. We would like to complete that now for $100,000. There's continuing to be new restrictions and requirements put on our police department on how we control and store police evidence, so we need that additional space. The city recently adopted a ADA infrastructure or improvement plan, and we have $50,000 budgeted in next year's budget to help start implementing some of those recommendations in that plan. And then we have $50,000 for some aerial photography. I think this is mainly for GIS updates, not aerial photography, but we have a lot of right-of-way discrepancy issues throughout the city, just because of the way the city has developed over time, and was a long period of time was under Jefferson County before the city incorporated it as a city. So there's a lot of right-of-way issues that need to be cleaned up, and this money will help do that. And finally, a few more projects here in our capital budget, some smaller ones. An update to the Clear Creek Master Plan, $25,000, which will look at the water flows in our Clear Creek waterway through the city, which helps with identifying floodways and floodplains in the city, which hopefully will take some properties out of the floodplain. And then completion of our environmental assessment reevaluation for our Clear Creek Crossing project is $25,000. That will help us get that project started and build the infrastructure that is required for development out there. $25,000 for a gateway signage program. We've been installing minor gateway signs throughout the city to identify when you enter Wheat Ridge. We have $25,000 budgeted, no specific location identified at this time. And finally, the final projects are neighborhood traffic management program. We get requests for different traffic calming issues or devices in neighborhoods, and we have $15,000 budgeted for that. And then $10,000 for emergency planning for the Maple Grove Reservoir that the city partners with other entities in that. Now moving on to our open space funds, we are proposing expenditures of just over almost $3.5 million in next year's budget. Most of that is for the renovation of Prospect Park Phase 2. $2.4 million of that will go towards that project. Also, $400,000 of the open space budget, in addition to the funds that were in the 2E budget, are for the reconstruction of Anderson Park. We got $400,000 for that project. Some other open space projects include the renovation of Stites Park, $75,000. Update to the open space management plan, $50,000. Repairs to Clear Creek Trail at $35,000. A couple other projects in open space. Contribution to the Jefferson County Open Space River Corridor project is $25,000, which completes a trail up through the canyon area along Clear Creek. And then also a new kiosk, bench, and trail repairs in Lewis Meadows at $25,000. Moving on to the Conservation Trust Fund. So we are proposing expenditures of at $750,000. Most of that, $500,000, is going towards renovation of the Anderson building. Again, this is in addition to the funds that are in the 2E budget. A few other Conservation Trust Fund highlights: Recreation Center maintenance, annual maintenance, $115,000. A new playground in Boyd's Crossing Park, $85,000. Reconstruction of the Apelbacher tennis court and crack ceiling of Panorama Park tennis court, $50,000. Those are all the major funds that we'll go over. There's a couple smaller funds that I won't discuss in detail. If you have any questions, we're here to answer any questions. But some other budget strategic priorities that show up in the total budget that I'd like to highlight for council and the public is our annual funding to our Urban Renewal Authority of $300,000 to help them with their projects. We have a couple active tax increment financing projects: the Kipling Ridge, which is the Sprouts development at 38 in Kipling, and we're proposing or projecting that the Corners at Wheat Ridge project at 38th and Wadsworth will be potentially open at the end of next year. So there will be a couple $100,000 that will be generated from that project, and the TIF funds will go back to pay for the public improvements that are being made currently at that project. We're going to continuing our annual public events that are hosted and coordinated through Local Works. We have $140,000 budgeted for that. That's for our 4 major events, which include, which is coming up here soon, our holiday lighting ceremony. We have our Ridge Fest ceremony, our Criterium, and what's our fourth? I'm missing it. Trunk or Treat. Thank you. Trunk or Treat. That one's coming up here soon. So those are the 4 major events. Then also we provide a grant to the Wheat Ridge Business District, which they $45,000, which they use for grants to businesses in Wheat Ridge, and our Live Local events that again is hosted by Local Works is $50,000 budget. We have, excuse me, a loan program, which we call Building Up Business Loan Program, or Bubble, which is coordinated by Local Works, $25,000 for that. We have some marketing efforts on some other, or some of our commercial corridors throughout the city. We have $7,500 allocated for our 44th Avenue corridor, $5,000 for our 29th Avenue Marketplace, $30,000 for our 38th Avenue. We're proposing to do an update to our neighborhood revitalization strategy study that was done just over 10 years ago. We're budgeting $77,500 for that effort, and a portion of that is with Local Works to help us with community outreach for that project. We're going to continue our annual, whoops, I'm sorry. Somebody should have threw a shoe at me. We're going to continue our annual TLC program, which we call which is our Traffic Safety, Life Quality, and Crime Reduction Program. That's $40,000, and that's a partnership between the city and Local Works. We identify specific residential and commercial neighborhoods throughout the city and do an effort with the neighbors and with the community and with the citizens in those neighborhoods to clean up those neighborhoods and provide support that they may need. We also have another loan program for our residents. It's called the Home Investment Loan Program, or HIP. We provide $25,000 to Local Works to help us with that program. We have quite a few historic properties in our city, and we like to maintain and manage those, of course, and we have a specific budget that we created a couple years ago to focus on that. We have $78,000 budgeted in next year's budget for those projects. A big effort that we're going to focus on next year, proposing to focus on, is some efforts, planning efforts for our Kipling and I-70 corridor. It's an area in the city that we see a lot of service calls to, both from our police department, code enforcement, public works, and we're budgeting $150,000 to put a strategy together to deal with many of the issues that we're dealing with in that corridor today. And then another citizen program that we're going to continue is our large item pickup program, which we host, I think, twice a year. We have $5,000 allocated towards that. A few more items. We're going to continue our contribution to the Carnation Festival. We are providing $80,000 to them. And we also budget just over $25,000 for staff overtime to help support that annual festival. We're going to attempt to bring back a Citizen Academy and reach out and try to get citizens who would like to participate and learn more about their local government. We're budgeting $5,000 for that. The mayor and council appointed a citizen review committee to look at our requests that we get from outside agency nonprofits. And this year, that committee has recommended a total of $122,700 in contributions to nonprofits that serve Wheat Ridge residents. And you all have a list of those specific programs that money is recommended to go to. And Wheat Ridge is going to be 50 in 2019, and I think we need to celebrate that. We're putting a minimal amount of money in the budget, the city's budget and Local Works budget, to help start some planning efforts to have a big celebration in 2019 to celebrate the incorporation of the city of Wheat Ridge. So those are the major highlights in the budget that we'd like to go over tonight, and of course we'll answer any questions that you may have. Quickly on staffing, though, we are proposing to increase our full-time equivalents employees in the general fund by 5.5, and those include a human resources technician, a buyer, 2 in our purchasing division, pool manager, recreation leader, police officer, 2, records management specialist, and a maintenance worker, 2 in the public works department, and elimination of a half-time purchasing technician. So again, that's a net increase of 5.5 FTEs. And that's broken down as such by department. Again, as I mentioned earlier, police department is our largest department with 115 employees. Our Parks and Rec is next at 48, just over 48. Administrative Services, 23. Municipal Court, or Community Development, 12. Public Works, 31. Administrative Services 23, Community Development 12, Municipal Court 10.5, and General Government, which is the Office of the Mayor and City Council, City Clerk's Office, and City Manager's Office has 4 employees. So that's, in a nutshell, the budget, and just some summary comments from me on some of the long-term fiscal challenges that we're seeing here in Wheat Ridge, and some of our short-term fiscal challenges and opportunities. Yes, we do have some opportunities, and we should all be very happy about that. I think there's some great things happening. We are still struggling somewhat to fund our large capital projects in the city, but we are still able to transfer about $2.5 to $3.5 million a year from our reserves to pay for capital projects. So we're keeping up with our preventative maintenance and a few other projects. We continue to see an increase in demand for service. We may not have all the appropriate resources to provide every service that our citizens want, but we do the best we can. And so there's always the challenge of focusing on economic development activities to make sure that we have the diverse tax base and the revenue sources to help us pay for those services and programs our citizens want. As I mentioned earlier, we are seeing a little bit of a dip in revenue, specifically sales tax. As you all know, we had closure of our Walmart store on July 7th of this year, and that's a very large sales tax producer. So although we are projecting about a 1.8% increase in sales tax compared to what we're estimating to bring in this year, when you actually look at what we originally budgeted in 2017, it's about a 2.5% decrease compared to what was budgeted. And that's all primarily because of the closure of Walmart. The May 8th hailstorm really taxed the city and with a lot of work and brought in some unanticipated expenditures of we're projecting over $1 million this year and next year, but it's also increasing our revenues, which we didn't project, of $3.2 million. So that is helping us with to pay for those expenses that are incurred because of the hailstorm, but also it's covering a little bit of that loss from Walmart. As I mentioned again, Walmart is closed. I directed staff to cut about $500,000 of discretionary spending in this year's budget, just to be prudent. Our 2018 revenue estimates do not include any backfilling for that Walmart at this point. The shopping center, Regency, where the Walmart was located, is negotiating with some tenants to fill the Walmart space. We don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but we did not project any revenue in 2018. But we're hoping that's going to come sooner than later and get our revenues back up to where they were. Again, I missed. And as I mentioned, we do have some opportunities which are going to help our long-term budget situation. Our communication center, which is our 911 center, where you call the police department if you have an emergency or a non-emergency, even police emergency. We are in the middle of a regionalization effort in combining a communication center with 8 other agencies in Jefferson County. For budget purposes, for the 2018 budget, we're assuming that transition is going to happen at the end of June. We believe it's going to happen earlier, but to be conservative, we're budgeting through June to have a full communication center here at the city. But we are projecting to save anywhere between about $370,000 and $575,000 a year with this regionalization effort. And the reason there's a big spread there is the new regionalized center, which is called JeffCom, is not up and running yet. Again, we're hoping that that's going to happen at the first of the year. They're still finalizing their budget for next year. And there was a recent proposed fee increase in the E911 charge that you all get on your phone bill. And that hasn't been finally approved by the PUC. But if it does, we may realize some of those savings. May not happen the first year. We may not get some of those savings for the second year. So there's a range in savings there. In that regionalization effort, all of our employees that we currently have in our communications center will be transferred to the JeffCom center. So our employee count will decrease by 13 FTEs. when that happens. The good news is, other good news and opportunities in Wheat Ridge, we have quite a few development projects lined up that are going to, again, diversify our tax base and increase our revenues to the city. The corners at Wheat Ridge is the 38th and Wadsworth project. If you drive by there, you see there's quite a bit of dirt being moved around. They're projecting that some stores there will be open by the fall of next year. So we'll start seeing some revenues off of that project. The Applewood Shopping Center, where Walmart was, as I mentioned, they're negotiating with a couple tenants to fill that, the old Walmart store. They're also working on attracting new tenants to the center. There's a Hacienda Colorado restaurant that is close to finalizing a deal. The new Starbucks opens. There's going to be some shifting of some of the buildings. The old Wells Fargo Bank is going to be demolished very soon, which will open up a pad for another retail opportunity. So we're hoping that that center is going to continue to generate sales tax for the city and increase over the next few years. The Clear Creek Crossing project across the street from Applewood Shopping Center is in development phases, or in internal development phases with the city. We're reviewing documents and official development plans. There's potential that 2019 there could be some new development opening at that center, which will also generate some new sales tax for the city. And then our Wheat Ridge Ward Station at the G Line commuter rail station, we're working with several different developers on different projects there. May not generate new long-term sales tax for the city, but there will initially be quite a bit of use tax and other fees associated with residential and other office type developments in that area. So that wraps up really the budget presentation for this evening. We continue to reach out to the public as much as we can to educate them on the budget. As mentioned earlier, City Council created the Citizen Outside Agency Review Committee to get citizens involved in deciding how we provide funding and contributions to our nonprofit communities. We have two different tools on the city's website. Balancing Act and the Socrata Online Budget Tool are both two tools that citizens can use to understand more about and learn about the city's budget. We had two public input opportunities were provided this summer. We did not receive any citizen comments during either one of those meetings on the budget, but tonight is a public hearing, and we are open for any comments tonight on the 2008 proposed budget. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Well done, Patrick. That was a lot of information, which you kept pretty darn clear for us. Council, I know we've had quite a discussion on this at our study session. Are there some questions tonight? Ms. Wooden?
I recall that at the end of the last study session, we discussed those additional, I think it was a 1.5 positions. One was for police. Are those added into the new presentation?
We did, yeah.
They are, okay.
Thank you. There was 3 positions. There was a police officer, 2, a records management specialist in the police department, and then a public works maintenance worker.
And those were the ones listed there?
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
I believe all suggested changes are in the budget you're presenting tonight.
Correct. Any changes that were requested at the study session were included in tonight's budget.
Council members?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As it relates to the FTE increase of 5.5, how does the decrease of 13 FTE within the police department affect that increase of 5.5?
We did not factor in the 13 decrease yet because we don't know exactly when they're going to transition over. Right now, I've been told it could actually happen on January 1. Those employees will actually transfer over to JeffCom and be JeffCom employees. They'll no longer be City of Wheat Ridge employees, but they'll still be working out of our center for a couple months, probably to March or April. But for now, we left them in just because we're not exactly sure when they're going to not become non-City of Wheat Ridge employees.
Okay, and then as it relates to in previous years, it appears as though we've been receiving a ballistic vest grant to the tune of about $10,000, and in 2018 we will not be receiving that grant. And so my question is whether or not there is money necessary or needed to fund ballistic vests, or whether that grant has covered our needs and we're no longer in need of those funds.
Right, that's a great question. So that ballistic vest program is through the Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance, and we haven't been notified whether or not they're going to continue that program. As the body-worn camera, I think, is an example in the JAG grant we recently brought. We generally get notifications on those much sooner, but with the current administration and the issues they're having pushing things through Congress right now, we've not been notified. So if we are notified, we get the grant, then we'll bring that forward. That grant helps pay for about half the cost of a vest. Vests run somewhere between $700 to $750, depending on the type. So if we do get the grant, then we'll bring that back as a supplemental and just add it. But we don't anticipate any significant issues with that. We'll still be able to buy our officers' vests and replace them every 5 years, which is the recommended replacement.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Duran.
Patrick, do we have, is it 2.8 in bonds that are due December 1st? 2.8 million?
2.8 million in bonds due.
Yes, is there something that's due on December 1st from the 2E funds, the bonding?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, our annual bond pay, I'm sorry, I don't know the exact date. You mean in this year or next year's budget?
For this year.
This year's budget, Heather, do you know the exact date? Yeah, but it's 2.8.
I don't know the exact date of when the bond payments due, but if you look at the spreadsheet in the 2E section, it does itemize what we're estimating that payment to be, which is 2.8 million, and then some other associated costs.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Then in 2018, we have, I think it's about 3.4 million is our debt service on the bonds, and the ballot question restricted our annual debt to 3.7 million.
Other questions? I don't see other questions from the council. I do have a question. On the community solar garden, in 2015, we leased, I can't find the lease agreement of $800,000 for a solar garden, with the payments of that hopingly being offset by credits from Excel. I'm kind of wondering how that program is moving along.
Sure. We our debt service annual debt service on that is just around $80,000, I believe. And I'm seeing what we projected. Unfortunately, I don't think we're bringing in the exact amount. It's just a little under 80,000 we've been bringing in revenues. 2016, which is our first full year of that program, the credits we brought in was 71,000, and our debt service is about 80. Is it 80,000? Can you look that up, Heather? I think it's about 80,000 for the debt service. 2017, I think we're estimating about the same. Yeah, our debt service stays the same annually. It's about 80,000, but so we're a little bit under the credits that we're bringing in to pay for that.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. I had a question regarding our revenues from the hailstorm and whether those had been updated in the budget in reference to our latest report of revenues. And from what I can tell, we have about 2.5 million in revenue, with another several hundred thousand in anticipated revenue with the current applications that are in the pipeline. And I'm not sure where that's currently reflected in the budget or how we're considering that.
We did not include that. We did not update it. We're showing about 2.4 million. And you're right, Mr. Urban. I think the last report was just over 2.5 million. 2.5 million is what we brought in. So, and obviously we have a couple more months here. It's slowing down, but so it's definitely going to be higher than our 2.4. So we'll have more revenues than projected, at least in those revenue sources. So it'll be a cherry on the ice cream next Sunday, I guess.
As it relates to the expenditures, you indicated that while an appropriation of over 800,000 has been made by council, an additional 200,000 on top of that may be requested in addition to that, or?
That's included in the 2018 budget. We budgeted about 200,000 for to continue to finish the work of the hailstorm. 800 this year and about 200 next year.
Okay, and I guess just based on our current expenses of 500,000, and that expense of 500,000 has generated 2.5 million in revenue, so to speak. It seems as though we would be anticipating a lot more revenue just based on how much expenses that we're expecting, and so I'm just curious how we get to 800 plus another 200,000 for that department.
How do we get to the additional?
How do we get to that number of an additional 200,000 on top of already allocating another 800,000 to the department?
Well, as was explained in the study session, they're estimates, first of all, and I think Lauren Mikulak tried to explain that, you know, through today or through the last few weeks, most of the permits that we've been seeing are for residential properties, and we're starting to see, I think, more commercial permits for repairs to commercial properties. So it's a guess, it's an estimate, and if hopefully we bring in more revenue than projected, which is good. If we spend less than that $1 million in expenses that we have budgeted, it won't get used. It'll go back to the reserves.
Thank you.
Ms. Wooden?
Yes, under the CIP budget that includes the following projects, and it talks about some of the smaller amounts down there, the gateway signage, the neighborhood traffic management. In light of the incident that happened last week to a Wheat Ridge student, I'm wondering if some additional money could be considered for some programming for safe routes to school, or not necessarily that program specifically, but maybe some safety regarding kids walking and biking to schools.
Specifically at that location, or just
no, at all.
Anywhere in the city?
Anywhere, yeah. And I do know that as we go along and as you balance the budget from this year, as I recall, there was some overflow, so there might be some funds that come available for the next year. And I'm not insisting it be included right now, but I'd like it to be considered that this is something that would be included next year. I'm sorry, Scott was going to comment on it.
Specifically in the budget this year, there is not a line item specifically to bike pit improvements. However, we do incorporate some of that with our other projects, like our maintenance overlay project. If there's opportunities to do some bike lanes, some extra striping, crosswalks, and those kinds of things, we include that in, wherever we can leverage and take care of a couple things in one swing. Also in our operations budget, we've had some money in there each year to either upgrade or install new, what's called, get the acronym right, RRFB, rectangular rapid flashing beacons. We've been putting in a couple of those every year. So in some of our other budgets, we do some of those things. But yeah, specifically, we don't have a designated line item in this year's budget. And Safe Routes to Schools grant, yeah, we are going to apply for one of those.
Right. I'm asking, I guess, that some money could be set aside for school safety in regards to kids walking and biking to school.
And just to remind council, if you hadn't seen it, we did do a video last year that was shared with schools and with our community on pedestrian safety, and specifically directed at elementary and middle and high school age children in regards to safe routes and how to cross an intersection safely. So we'll look for an opportunity to do something similar to that and try to reinforce it as well.
I saw that, and I know we filmed it at Pennington, and so thank you for that. And programming like that, similar to that.
Ms. Davis?
So I have just a quick question to dovetail onto that, and a lot of it is because, well, we know it's Wadsworth, and Wadsworth is crazy, and I think Wadsworth is only going to get crazier as we work on our improvements to Wadsworth. We've all seen what it did in Lakewood by 6th Avenue and that type of thing. And I guess the one thing is I'm fearful of, especially living in that neighborhood and hearing other folks living in adjacent neighborhoods. I'm worried about cut-through traffic. And so I think that, a lot of our citizens, we hear that a lot, cut-through traffic of people avoiding Wadsworth, avoiding certain streets. And I'm just wondering if we could also, and again, this might not be this budget year, but when we're starting to look at, especially when Wadsworth's getting the construction done, that we look at some more comprehensive program rather than kind of a reactive program on how we can handle cut-through traffic during these higher construction, higher frustration types of areas, because you're going to have, heck, Colorado was on Dateline for road rage. So I think that we need to look into that as we create some construction issues on our larger streets, on how we're going to protect our neighborhoods and our schools, because there are schools that aren't far from a lot of those major arteries.
Yeah, I can comment a little further on that. We're doing a little bit of that right now through the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program, which does address cut-through concerns that folks might have. But as you mentioned, that's a little more reactive, more coming to us from the residents. I think with the completion of the Bike Ped Master Plan and some of the priorities identified in there, it did talk about trying to calm traffic. So I think comprehensively, longer term, we could look at those things a little more proactively, both with implementation of that plan and through the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Scott, do I remember correctly that specific budget, the traffic calming budget, was not fully spent last year? Is that true?
That's why they reduced it.
Yeah. Actually, this past year it will be. We did a few more improvements this year that were, typically up until now we've only been doing a few speed humps per year, which hasn't spent the entire budget. But this last year we did some concrete work in some places, some curbing with that. So it did get spent this last year. Will be, yeah.
Okay, just to follow up a little bit. I know that as part of the traffic calming process, a neighborhood meeting is required. Can you tell me, kind of in a percentage, how many meetings result in no action because the neighbors don't want the traffic calming?
Yeah, I don't have an accurate number for you for that. I would just estimate off the top of my head with the number of requests we've received. We've had public meetings, some petitions. I'd say the majority of the requests we get, they do not get the adequate number of percentage of signatures on the petitions, which is 80%. We do get some. When we go through this process, we find that residents on a particular street often have differing opinions on whether they want speed humps or not. Some are very adamant about wanting them, and then their neighbors will just say, no, it's fine, I don't want this. So, probably, I'd say 2/3 to 3/4 the requests we get, no further action usually happens through the process that we've established.
Thank you. We have some folks here for public comment on this item. Are we ready for that?
I guess just before that, given some of the discussion around traffic calming and knowing that our current budget for 2018 is set at $15,000 for that program, I'm wondering if we'd be amenable to adjusting that line item to $30,000 for the next year, and in hopes of either enticing folks to apply for the program or otherwise encourage more traffic calming in the neighborhoods, and knowing that we're currently sitting at a number of only $15,000 for this particular program and how important it is, I would like to see us at least double that. I'd be open for more than that, but I think it'd be reasonable to suggest, given the ability to fund and to work through those numbers may be more difficult than actually funding it. So would council be okay with adjusting that to 30 instead of 15?
Are you making that a motion?
Well, I don't know if that's an appropriate motion at the present time, or if we are.
It's not a study session, so.
You can make that.
So I'll make a motion to increase the neighborhood traffic calming program to 30,000.
I'm wondering if you might consider making an addition to that motion for 30,000 for school safety? School, how would you term that, Scott Brink?
I think that the most appropriate way would be to say that we'll be increasing the neighborhood traffic calming program to 30,000 and an additional 30,000 for efforts around safe routes to school.
Not the bond, but programming for, how would you say that, Scott? Because the Safe Routes to School is a specific grant.
Yes, I understand that, but it falls into that sort of category of encouraging kids to walk to school.
So would that be 60,000?
Mayor, Mr. Dahl would like to opine on, we probably should wait to do this as an amendment, I guess.
Yeah, you can certainly talk about the merits of it and sort of get ready for it. Procedurally, the right way to do it, you'll have a main
Part of
motion.
the passing of the budget?
You'll have a main motion to approve the resolution approving the budget.
Okay.
And you take amendments to that, and this can be one of them. Perfectly fine to talk about the merits of those because you're in discussion on the budget generally and kind of get ready then to have those amendments teed up when the motion for the adopting the resolution, which in turn adopts the budget, is made.
So the general comments over here?
As along the lines of that, Ms. Duran and I would like to ask for us to put some more money into the ADA improvements that are citywide. We only have a $50,000 budget there. It's over a $4 million project, so at $50,000 a year, it'll be 80 years before we get done with that. And so we were gonna ask for $200,000 in addition to go, so $250,000. And if we can maintain that level of support, then we could be done in 16 years rather than 80. So if while we're thinking about how much, if we want to do 30 here and 30 there and 200 there, then maybe we need to come to the table with some smaller numbers so that everybody can get what they want.
Point of order. Is there not a motion on the floor, and has it been seconded?
It wasn't seconded.
It wasn't seconded.
No, it wasn't seconded.
It wasn't
as I
seconded,
heard
and
it.
then the attorney suggested that we should wait until the motion's
Suggested
been
we're in
made.
general discussion, so we can go forward.
But, keep notes, because then when you get around to amendment time, you'll be ready on each amendment.
All right, so we have another thought of increasing that. What was the amount again?
It was 200,000, so a total of 250,000.
We have an existing 50,000. you'd
Correct,
like
and
to
adding
increase another
200,000 to that.
And you would like to add another 15,000. All right, other discussion? Well, no, that goes to 30 then. Oh, and then, right.
I have it. I have it all down. It's 200,000, additional 200,000 for ADA. Increase the neighborhood traffic management from 15 to 30, and then add 30 for safe routes to schools.
All right. Other discussion about this? We have added now 245,000. What was our, as far? That's the suggestion. A suggestion. I realize that, but this is a discussion. What was our amount of unrestricted balance before we get into the area of?
We're at 18.8%. So So it's about 600,000 is what what you have to get down to 17%.
You want to add something else?
Yeah, just to be kind of a budget hawk, we've just all of a sudden went from adding 15,000 to the budget to 245,000 or something. Do we have any cuts that we want to take to offset the increase of proposed spending, or are we just going to just add $200,000 without establishing need, where it's going to go? how it's going to get paid for.
Well, I would say just in general, as it relates to our existing revenues and the numbers provided by city staff, we're at least $300,000 off in the amount of revenue being received from the hailstorm revenues at the present time, and that's not including the existing $600,000 in unrestricted reserves that we are looking at as well. So there's almost $1 million in existing revenues that have not been allocated towards any specific project or not. And as it relates to these particular projects, I think that they are a good investment in the community because they're going into hard infrastructure investments.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Are we discussing, should we be discussing this after a motion is made? We have no motion on the floor right now.
Well, what we've, yeah, and we still have public comment. The discussion that's taking about is because we will have a motion as to proposing the budget, then these other items will come in as amendments to that proposal, to that motion, correct?
That's correct, and I understand that your normal practice
Right.
is you
We're a
introduce an
little off.
item, you have a motion right away, and then you go for it. I would suggest to you that the budget process is a little different. You have a public hearing, there's so many items, it really lends itself to a kind of a full discussion ahead of the motion, really. So I think that in this case, that procedure is fine, that you have the discussion, you hear from the public, which you're going to do in a minute, and then when you're done with questions, you can take the main motion and start taking amendments, and you can have more discussion on those amendments at that time, too.
In that case, don't anybody drop their teeth, but I'm going to agree with Larry. We just $245,000 just off the cuff here is just way too much, and I agree with Larry that we haven't established a need for these things. If you consider, for example, the ADA requirement, our only actual requirement is that we make an attempt. So you have to prioritize is making ADA compliant curbs more important to you than some of the other things that happen, or that some other opportunities we have. And I would say, for me, they're not. I hate to spend $200,000 on handicapped ADA compliant sidewalks when I asked for a similar amount last week and got voted down, so I'm afraid I have sour grapes about that. So I agree with Larry.
Mr. Pond?
I wasn't going to say anything.
You could stand.
Well, I'm just going to suggest, certainly we're going to talk about this as an amendment, and we should. And at that time, I will likely try to understand whether or not this can be deferred as a decision, because there's some strategic things that I think are involved in this. I think we can find a basis of need. I find it hard to argue that there isn't need in all of this space. However, there's a lot of we're talking about three things that have a lot of geography in terms of spread out across the city, and a lot of complexity in terms of prioritization. I guess I would ask staff, is it possible, even at this magnitude of $250,000, for us to essentially say we're gonna come back? We may have a consensus tonight that we'd like to look at spending that money and make that appropriation, and next year when we can do some more work on this and really look at what look at all these things. What should we be doing about traffic safety and crossing safety? What should we be doing about the ADA plan? if the money is there, as we claim that it is tonight, it's going to be there in January as well. And unless that's inappropriate, I might suggest that we try to be a little bit more strategic and not try to figure it all out, which we couldn't tonight. But I'd ask Patrick, is it possible to appropriate through some planning and strategy sometime in the first quarter, perhaps?
Yeah, we could do it either way. You could put the money in now, or we could bring it back. We do have an approved, did we approve ADA plan? ADA plan, is it coming? Oh, it's coming. We'll have a approved ADA plan, which has priorities in areas of the city that need improvements. So, yeah, it's really council's call. You could amend the budget now and put it in, or we could come back to council after the first of the year and do a supplemental and add it then.
I'd like to add another 2 or 3 cents, which is that I really caution council to get ourselves too close to our 17% requirement, because that doesn't give us right off the bat, starting out the year without much working funds as far as what needs could be there. We've lost Walmart. We know we're going to lose a lot of income there. We may need matching funds for a specific project, as we did with Fruitdale, something that we need to bring through that's helpful to the city. We're going to need money for Wadsworth. We don't have enough funding for that project. So I just really want to caution council as to, once again, getting ourselves so close to the 17% that we have restricted ourselves at this, before the year even begins. Okay.
I appreciate your comments, Madam Mayor, but I'd also like to say that there's another side to that coin, where if we do get to a point where some sort of urgency or emergency happens, we could come back and say, well, we had this much money for ADA and we can go back into the ADA. So it can go both ways. We can give it later, or we can take it later also through a budget amendment.
In allocating it but holding it open for other use. We have some public comment. I would like to bring that forward.
Just one quick
Ms.
comment.
Duran?
Thank you. Our budget doesn't include any revenues from Starbucks that just opened, and about, 3 or 4 other projects that will be opening soon. Correct, Patrick? Like Bartles Coffee?
It's included in the natural growth. We projected a increase in sales tax revenue, so it doesn't include the Clear Creek Crossing project. It does include the Wheat Ridge Corners, because we believe that will be open by the end of the year. But yeah, these smaller projects that are going in, the Starbucks, it's replacing a current Starbucks, so the differential between the two is not huge. And we factor that in by, I can't remember what the increase is, a 1.8% increase or 2.3% in sales tax. So it's factored into that.
Okay, thank you. I would just really like us to think that these are 3 very important projects. It isn't, just $300,000 for just, which I support putting a sidewalk and doing what we can on that west side of Wadsworth, but this is citywide. So that's why I would support this. I think it's a good thing to invest our dollars in.
Okay, let's move on to having some of this public comment. I'm going to start with Christine Disney, followed by Ashley Holland.
Amen.
Ashley Holland? No comment? Carolyn Duran? No comment, okay. David Schaefer? You're actually going to comment then? Then you got to get up.
Hi, I'm David Schaefer, the current treasurer of Local Works. I just wanted to thank City Council for all the support over the years. I'm not aware of any particular questions that the council has, but if there are any, we'd be happy to answer them. So, thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, that being the case, where the heck are we? We've been with this for so long. Yeah, I probably need to close the public meeting. Let me see where we're at here. All right, we've had a public comment. I'm going to close the public meeting, hearing, excuse me. And we do need a motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 38-2017, a resolution adopting the city budget and appropriating sums of money to the various funds and spending agencies in the amounts specified for the city of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for the 2018 budget year.
Second.
Madam Mayor,
Seconded by Ms. Wooden.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make an amendment to that.
Okay,
I would like to amend the 2018 budget to increase the neighborhood traffic management program from $15,000 to $30,000, and I would like to add a $30,000 amount for programs related to encouraging safe routes to school.
Second.
discussion?
I have a procedural question. So if I'd like to make an amendment, then I have to wait for this amendment to go first, and then I'll make mine?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just
Mr.
briefly, I would really support this if we had something coming forth from staff to show the need, the where, and since we can appropriate money first quarter in the year after we have specific metrics laid out on where the money would be spent, I'd be much more inclined to vote for this amendment.
So he made the
Further
motion.
discussion?
Second. Okay.
We're having yeah. Any more discussion? Then let's cast your votes on this amendment.
Motion carries 6-2 with council members Matthew and Fitzgerald voting no.
Any further amendments? Ms. Hoppy?
I would like to propose to amend the budget to increase the earmarked amount for the ADA improvements by $200,000 for a total of $250,000 for the ADA transition plan.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Duran. Discussion? Mr. Pond?
Thank you. I do appreciate this topic being brought up. I'm going to vote no on this, not because I don't agree that we should look hard into our investments in advancing and accelerating the ADA program, which is what I think you guys are talking about, so I agree with that. I prefer actually to really look at that analytically and strategically, and then to appropriate the money. So that's why I'll be voting no tonight on this.
Ms. Davis?
I quickly would mirror similar thoughts of Mr. Pond, and because it is coming back, I did hear, did we say, Patrick, in January, that the overall ADA plan is coming back to City Council with prioritization of projects? Is that correct? Or did we say first quarter?
Yeah, I don't think I set a date.
Okay.
I don't know if it's scheduled yet. I don't think we brought back the final plan for approval, have we yet, Scott? So it'll be coming soon. We may have it scheduled.
Okay, so maybe I just heard soon and not
Yeah.
a date, but I would mirror the same. Once we get that plan, then we could allocate some funds based off of the prioritization.
October 23rd, actually. That's what it's scheduled for.
Any other discussion? Please cast your votes.
The motion is tied 4-4 with council members Matthew, Fitzgerald, Davis, and Pond voting no.
And
This being
because
a budget item, I cannot vote on it.
It's an adoption or amendment of the budget is the one case in which the mayor may not break a tie. So the motion fails.
Okay. All right. With that, I imagine we just move on to the next item.
We could vote on it.
Yeah, got to vote on the motion as amended.
Oh, that was the amendment.
Yeah.
You want the whole thing? Whatever. Let's go ahead, let's go forward and vote on the entire, the original
It's clear.
motion as amended. Clear the deck.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 2, Mr. Matthews.
Item 2 on our agenda tonight is resolution number 37-2017, a resolution levying general property sales taxes for the year 2017 to help defray the costs of government for the city of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for the 2018 budget year. Just a short piece of background on this. The city's property tax mill levy will remain at 1.830 mils for the 2018 budget, potentially raising $1,022,134 in property tax revenue, an increase of $168,904 compared to 2016.
Do we need any staff report on that?
Well, if you have any questions.
Are there any questions? Please propose a motion.
I move to approve resolution number 37-2017, a resolution levying a mill levy of 1.830 on general property taxes for the year 2017 to help defray the costs of government for the city of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for the 2018 budget year.
Second.
Secondly, is there any discussion? Please cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Item number 3, Ms. Wooden.
This is resolution number 35-2017, a resolution authorizing and supporting submittal of an application for a local parks and outdoor recreation grant from the State Board of the Great Outdoors Colorado Trust Fund for the renovation of Prospect Park Phase 2. At issue, Prospect Park requires renovation and updating to meet the needs of the individuals and groups that visit the park. The Prospect Park Phase 1 is in the construction process. Approval of this resolution supports a grant application for Phase 2 of the Prospect Park renovation project, commits the appropriated 2018 funds as the required match for the grant, and authorizes the mayor to sign the contracts if the grant is awarded. An approved resolution is required by the Great Outdoors Colorado showing city council support for the requested project.
Parks Director Joyce Manwaring is still with us. In case we have questions, or did you wish to make a statement?
I'd like to add that the funding for Prospect Park is appropriated in the 2018 budget, but is also contingent on revenues and award of the grant.
That we receive it. Okay. Any questions?
I would like to see if there's a way within this process for council to receive a report back on the success or the failure of that grant application, and I don't know how to include that in, if we need to include that in the resolution, or we just ask for that report back in 6 months to see what the status of that is so that we know what happened and what the result was.
I'll make a note of that and do a staff report on the status of the grant.
Thank you.
That'll be April 1st of 2018 when we're notified.
Thank you.
Is the motion in order?
Motion is in order.
I move to approve resolution number 35-2017, a resolution authorizing and supporting submittal of an application for a local parks and outdoor recreation grant from the State Board of the Great Outdoors Colorado Trust Fund for the renovation of Prospect Park Phase 2.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Matthews. Please cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0.
And our final item, number 4, Ms. Duran.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Motion to cancel the study session of the Wheat Ridge City Council on November 6, 2017, due to the municipal election. Issue: the Wheat Ridge municipal election is on November 7, 2017. The City Council typically cancels the study session scheduled the evening before an election.
Second.
Motion has been made.
Oh, like, we're getting through here. Let's get to the executive session, right?
Oh, let's sit and chat
I'm
about
ready to
this.
second.
All right, okay.
Did you second? No. Motion in order?
Please give a motion, and Davis is going to yell a second out here.
I move to cancel the study session of City Council scheduled for November 6, 2017, due to the municipal election.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Davis. Any discussion? No? Please cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-1 with Councilmember Urban voting no.
Okay, that concludes our business portion of the meeting. Let's go forward, and then we can adjourn to executive session. City managers,
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder for City Council and the public, we do have a RTD meeting tomorrow evening here at Wheat Ridge City Hall, 6:30. They're going to provide an update on the G line and also some other RTD general updates. So if you're interested in the progress of the G line, you can come and learn about it at that meeting. I did send you council some updates recently, and fortunately, there may be some light at the end of the tunnel, the train tunnel, and as you remember, the FRA approved the waivers that RTD was asking for, but the Colorado PUC didn't. But both RTD and Denver Transit Partners, who's building the line, believe that a decision might have been made with not full information. So we're gonna try to go back and try to get a different ruling. So that could potentially start the testing again on the G line. And I was told that actually there's about 98% of the testing's already done on the G line. It's just the final testing of the crossing arms. So if the PUC approves that, it would be a matter of just a couple weeks to finish the testing. So so no dates yet, but hopefully sooner than later that if we can get the PUC to agree to move it forward. So you'll learn more tomorrow night, though.
I hope that they do. Our citizens are very eager to ride their train. City Attorney's matters.
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Clerk's matters, City Clerk.
Yeah, I have several things actually. First of all, I neglected to do this at the last City Council meeting, but I wanted to note the passing of a former council member. Doris Ibeson passed away early in September. I went to her memorial service, and she served on council from 1985 to 1989. She was a strong, determined woman, and one of her legacies, I'm not sure she's the only one, but one of the things that we can thank her for is the Active Adult Center. She was instrumental in pushing to have, at the time it was called a community center, but that's one of the things she was really pushed for and can be remembered for. She was 94 or something like that, just really lasted a long time. No, I think one. Yeah, I think one, District 1. Then the CMCA, the Colorado Municipal Clerks Association, had their first conference, their first solo conference, I should say. The Clerks Fall Conference. For many years it had been paired with government finance officers, all the tax people and so on, and they finally decided to separate and have separate conferences. And so this was the first year the clerks did it on their own, and it was very good. And the one thing, a lot of good speakers and very, very timely discussions about issues clerks face. But I wanted to share with council that I had a really good conversation with a fellow from Granicus, and we have Granicus. And as it turns out, apparently there are some there are some features of Granicus that, I mean, we don't have everything Granicus has to offer. I talked to him about this one program that would be really good that was $4,000, but we could use it not only for clerks, but for all the boards and commissions and so on. That's a different thing. But we did talk about the ability to use the programs that the city already does have. And Robin and I are going to meet with him and see if there isn't, well, not if, there are some ways that we can use what the city already owns in Granicus to improve the agendas and the minutes as far as putting links into it to make information more easily available to the citizens. So it's not, I mean, we are such a transparent city. I mean, I get comments all the time by people even from newspaper people say, man, you guys really, you open up a lot of stuff for citizens. Not every city is that open like you are. And the information's all there and people can get it, but sometimes it's kind of hard to find. And so there's a possibility we may be able to improve access in the minutes from Granicus. Then I wanted to also ask council to, the Boards and Commissions dinner is next Wednesday. And if you haven't contacted Robin, whether you're going to be there or not be there, please contact him, because there's a program where the council people speak and hand out the things. And if you're not going to be there, it would be nice to know so we can divvy that up accordingly instead of last minute, like, oh, who's going to do this and who's going to do that. Then
Can you remind us of the time?
What?
Can you remind me of the time? Is it?
I don't know, I think maybe the cocktail hour might start at 5 or 5:30.
Okay,
I'll get to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Today we had the logic and accuracy test out at the Jefferson County elections. That's affectionately known as the LAT. And since the whole state of Colorado has now gone to one system for counting ballots by a company called Dominion, this was much simpler. And usually you're there from like 9 to 3 o'clock. We were done by 11:30. It was very, very good. And last week at the clerks conference, I stayed extra and toured the Larimer County facility, and they have these same machines. So it is all over the state. I wanted to say that Cider Days is this Saturday at the Sod House Museum, so come and I'm sure they will buy some apples and have the apple press going. And also, last thing, I'll leave a couple of these things off. October 16th is the day that ballots will start to be mailed out. So that's for the public too. So you might not get it on the 17th, but that's when they start. They might, I don't know if they go by zip codes or alphabetical or whatever, but the county will start mailing ballots on the 16th, and usually we're about the second or third day. And so by the end of that week or beginning next week, you should be getting your ballots in the mail. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. You've been sort of holding that. All right, I think we can now.
Council comment.
Do you want to go ahead, because we're coming back afterwards, so that's why I was sort of. You want to do it now? All right, let's go through the council comments. I'll start down here at this end. Jenny.
I'd like to request that it be brought forward to a future study session, that we do discuss a code of conduct for elected officials. We brought this up before, and it was tabled at that time, and obviously based on comments from a citizen, it needs to be brought up again. Some of these things have been going on for years, and it's unacceptable, it's embarrassing, and we need to raise the level, raise the bar in the city government. And I also would like to know what it means to have a hot link to the city that the citizen had mentioned, if that is true, what that means, and I'd like to know if it's true. And I'd like the city treasurer to respond to that, and that really it be discussed at a future study session about having a code of conduct. Many city councils have them, so it's not out of line, and it's definitely something that would put everybody on the same playing level and hold them accountable.
Mr. Matthews?
Just, I'm not sure I understand what's going to happen here. Are we going to adjourn this meeting and then go to executive session? Well, then why are we, and then you said we're coming back here, though? I'm
vote.
confused.
We won't really adjourn the meeting. What we'll do is we'll go to executive session. We'll come out here.
So in
Wait
ess-
a minute, we have to make that
Well,
decision.
we haven't made that
haven't
motion
made
yet.
that
We're
decision.
still inside of elected officials,
Right,
and that's what's happening.
exactly.
In essence, that's what's going to happen, though? Okay,
No,
thank you.
that isn't, because we haven't made that decision. Right. I'm sorry, I was thinking that was probably going to happen. Uh-oh. So, at this point, we're just doing public, elected official commentary. You have nothing? Okay. Mr. Fitzgerald?
I just wanted to remind anybody who's watching that there are 5 people running for school board, and they're going to have a debate in the coming weeks. And unfortunately, I forgot to bring the paper with me, so I can't tell you where or when. But if you will call me on the phone, my number's on the city website. I'll find that and tell you where it is and when it is. So that's it.
Ms. Davis?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Mr. Pond?
Two things. I want to just thank in all of this the Parks and Rec staff and department and congratulate them. I have experienced personally many of the things that were either in that video or stated tonight, especially the fact that we've got an incredibly dedicated staff who try to make your recreation experience, whatever that is, the best that it can be. And we're lucky to have not only those facilities, but the people who care in those facilities. And that's clearly why we were a gold medal finalist. So congratulations. And it's, I hope we can continue that work. Second, really quick, I'll just say I'm going to pick one of these things on this as I go through this, and then either we'll agree with that or you will amend that motion based on what I pick, and that's how that's going to happen when my turn comes back up.
Mr. Urban?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to recognize the passing of Skylar Cooper Holland, and he was a 6th grader at Wilmore Davis Elementary who was tragically killed on Friday in an auto pedestrian crash. And there will be a fundraiser for his family on Saturday, October 14th at 4 p.m. at Clancy's Irish Pub. And so I expect the entire community to make it out there for that and to hold up that family in their thoughts and prayers and continue to watch over all of our children in our community as we go forward. But just wanted to recognize his family and his loved ones as we go forward, as that can be just an unbelievably tragic situation, and want to make sure that everybody knows that traffic on 38th at 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon should be pretty heavy, because I'm expecting quite a few people to be there. So that is really important to get out there. Then as well, the RTD meeting tomorrow night should be a good opportunity to understand what's happening with the G line and get some updates on that. So encourage folks to come out to these chambers tomorrow evening for the RTD Gold Line update meeting, and then the Cider Days coming up this weekend. So thank you.
Zach, when was the date again on the fundraiser? I'm sorry.
It's on October 14th at 4 p.m. at Clancy's Irish Pub.
Thank you.
Ms. Hoppy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to let everybody know that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I'd like to invite you to join the family tree in saying that there's no room for domestic violence in your life. One of the things that they do is they have a girls' night out fundraiser, and it's a lot of fun. And they have a fashion show, and it's $50 for a single or $180 for a 4-pack. It's at the Lamar Center on the 18th of this month up in Arvada, so it's close to home. You can go to thefamilytree.org to get your tickets for that event if you'd like to. I'd also like to let you know that Trunk or Treat's coming, and we need candy, and a lot of it. And so, if you would like to donate some candy, there are some places you can drop it off. You can drop it off at the Personal Achievement Martial Arts. You can drop it off at C+. You can drop it off at Local Works, and maybe the city will hold it for us too. But if you can donate candy, we run out of candy almost every year, and we had several thousands of kids there last year, so we're really hoping to not run out of candy this year. And I just wanted to say thank you to Dominic and the Kiwanis who are going to be doing the games this year for us. So, thanks everybody.
I didn't want to be remiss in thanking the Carnation Festival for providing us with their detailed budget, and Local Works also for providing us with what we requested. So thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, as well as congratulations to Parks and Recreation. We can be very proud of that. We've got a gold medal award, Parks and Rec, and we've got a police department. Gosh, what's the name of the? Accredited, thank you, accredited police department. Pretty neat. Mr. Pond.
All right. I move to go into executive session for a conference with the city attorney, city manager, and appropriate staff under Charter Section 5.7B1 and CRS 24-6-4024B to receive legal advice concerning the Longs Peak Metropolitan District litigation. I further move to return to the open meeting at the close of the executive session for the purpose of taking any formal action deemed necessary.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Duran. Discussion?
Come back.
Return. Return for the vote.
Return to the open meeting at the close of the executive session for the purpose of taking any formal action deemed necessary.
Thank you, Councilman. That was crossed out on my written copy.
You did say it.
Okay.
Cast your votes, please.
Motion carries 8-0.
Sorry, what written copy? I have the only copy. That's last week's.
That's last week.
That's last week's.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope no one's confused. I wanted to say, I put those copies of last week's motion so that you could see that there's another option. Because I think some council people didn't know that there were options about that. So that's why that's on your desk.
to the open meeting, and we are ready, I guess we are ready for a motion on this particular item.
Yes, if I can give you just a couple of procedural suggestions.
That would be great.
First, I'd appreciate it if one of you would make a motion to suspend the council rules for the purpose of permitting discussion on any motions that you take in what particular order you end up making your discussion. If someone could make that motion, I'd
Madam Mayor.
appreciate it.
I move to suspend council rules to allow each council member to speak to their reasons for voting one way or the other on the motion that is yet to be made.
Second, please.
Second.
Please cast your votes on that. This is to suspend the council rules. We need a majority on that. Major majority. Yes?
Majority.
Super majority.
Yeah, super majority.
All right. No.
Do we need to revote? No, I think they'll all come in.
Okay.
Motion carries 8-0.
Okay. With that in mind, council, I'd appreciate your taking a motion to give me direction with respect to the appeal in the Longs Peak Metro District case.
So this is a motion to give you direction on,
To give me direction, yes.
okay?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will make this motion. I move to direct the city attorney to not appeal the district court order in the Longs Peak Metro District litigation.
Second.
Made and seconded.
Comments down the line?
Let's do the comments, starting with just the very end.
I've got something I'd like to read to keep myself focused and timed here. 300 was born out of citizen frustration and mistrust with their local government. Citizens, including myself, were told Walmart was the best we could do because of our demographics and income level. Citizens for an Inclusive Wheat Ridge had sampled all districts before we pursued ballot question 300. The consistent message from our citizens was they supported smart development, they wanted to ensure public input, government transparency, accountability, and they wanted a voice in how their tax dollars were spent. Despite council majority's opinion of 300, it has not been detrimental to the Wheat Ridge economy. It was not ill-written, it was not anti-business, and it was not stifled, and it did not stifle opportunity or public-private partnerships. The corners at 38th and Wadsworth will now have a Lucky's Market as an anchor store, along with many local shops. We have Fruitdale School Lofts, Bartles Coffee, Discovery Tap House, Starbucks at 32nd and Youngsfield, and numerous other businesses. The court judge who declared 300 unconstitutional ruled on general powers, state legislature, rather than enumeral powers, home-ruled city charter amended by the voters, like Wheat Ridge. In November of 2015, 4,980 Wheat Ridge citizens voted in favor of ballot question 300. In our city flow chart, the citizens of Wheat Ridge are listed at the top, followed by the mayor and city council. Our citizens' voices have been heard at the ballot box, in city council sessions, and countless meetings. I will be voting to appeal the judge's decision on 300 because supporting the will of our citizens is our responsibility and our duty. Thank you.
Thank you. My decision tonight is based on the fact of the information we got from our city attorney, the fact that the appeals court could take a year, or is taking a year, and with the information of the things that are going on in our community and what it could, timing-wise, kind of ruin for our community. I'd also like to let citizens know that I do understand that they want more say over what happens with TIF, and every TIF that has sales tax has to come to the city council for a cooperation agreement. We can say no there. So if it turns out that we do not appeal this tonight, I want to let you know that you still have opportunities for your voice to be heard on the way your TIF monies are spent. I will be voting to not appeal.
Thank you. As it relates to this motion to not appeal, I'm forced to look at the oath that we've taken as a council member to uphold our city charter. And as our city charter is currently written, and despite the decision by a district court judge to the contrary, our city charter at the present time requires the citizens to vote on any TIF agreement above $2.5 million. And I do believe that this judge at the district court level made an incorrect assessment as it relates to the enumerated powers within our city charter, and our status as a home rule city is only as strong as an ability to hold that city charter up at the instance when it's being challenged by a district court judge. And so in this instance, I think it's appropriate to appeal this decision and allow the appeals courts to make a decision. And should they decide that it is that the district court judge was correct, then that matter would be settled. If the appeals court were to decide that the district court judge is wrong, in which I believe that they were wrong, and that this is an enumerated power of the city within our home rule charter, then the people will still have a voice in how TIF agreements are made in the city. And the fact that city council is allowed to sign off on these types of agreements is the exact reason why ballot question 300 was enacted in the first place, because of a lack of trust and a willingness to put those large agreements in the hands of a small number of people, given the large scope of those types of agreements. And so for that reason, I will be voting against this motion to not appeal, and I would be in favor of appealing this decision.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd take 2 seconds to just thank everyone who's been involved in this, and I do mean that on both sides, and attorneys and staff and everyone else. We've been talking about this for a while in our community, and it's very important, and I don't want to diminish anyone's passion or position about it. I want to share mine. A few things were said at the beginning of this meeting, and perhaps over the last couple of weeks under citizen comment. I do think they're important comments, but a few things. One comment that I think bridged a couple of the speakers tonight was that we should strive to be responsible to all residents of the city. That's what I heard. I highlighted all. I'm not sure if the speaker meant me to highlight all, but that's what I did because, I just want to say that when this first came around, to be honest, I was not enthusiastic about defending it. However, when we were discussing it and I was listening to my colleagues up here, I did agree that at that time I had an obligation and a responsibility to defend the actions in court that were going on, and we did that. I did that, and I agreed to the logic at that point. At this point, as obviously the motion that I made to not appeal, that is my position, and it very much has to do with being responsible to all residents of the city, all residents of my district. Obviously we've talked a lot about 300 winning or losing, and obviously 300 passed. But 4,600 and some people voted to not pass that. 4,998 people voted for it. So it won, absolutely. But there is, almost slightly less than half of the electorate who actually showed up and had a different opinion about that. In fact, we are, responsible to all of that electorate. And again, I do believe that defending it up to this point was the right move, even if I was reticent about that at the beginning, and I did listen to the folks here, and I do understand that. At this point, as I look at it, the reason why I will vote not to appeal is that I do believe that this has gone through a fair process. I believe that that we've done the obligation, that I've satisfied the obligation to defend in this case. And in fact, now for me, and especially in District 3, and I want to tell that story, as I went out and I have knocked on doors many years, ever since I started that, this parcel at Clear Creek has been a topic of discussion at people's doors repetitively. And of course, they don't call it Clear Creek Crossing because, they had their mind set on a Cabela's, and the city worked very hard for that. And unfortunately, many circumstances, not the least of which is recession cycles, created a situation where that didn't come to pass. And I can tell you right now that as I knock through doors on District 3, that is one of the biggest losses that I hear about, and one of the biggest complaints that I hear about on knocking doors. I do believe right now that a further appeal of this, and it was already mentioned that the appeal length, the duration, is going to be an entire year, and the uncertainty of that appeal in that space could be very possibly detrimental to the advancing the development at Clear Creek Crossing. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't care how many times I will come up to this button in this specific case, I will vote to not appeal, and I will vote to try to let this issue move forward, this development move forward, and to not threaten it. So that is why I will vote to not appeal this at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Pond. Ms. Davis.
Thank you. So I've just got a few bullets. So as I will also vote to not appeal the district court decision. And I just bulleted a couple things that have come up in citizens' comments and council and our discussions, and also some discussions with legal. So one of the things, going back to what Mr. Pond had commented on, we did initially defend the charter and ballot 300 with the district courts, and it failed. So we did represent the people, and at least the electoral vote. I will also mirror that, again, there's a 4,900 versus 4,600 some odd. So there are larger groups of people that we're looking at. So we did represent the people when we did defend it to begin with. We've also been told that this would be a difficult appeal and the duration would be a year, which I think is detrimental, which goes into some of the costs. We will, although insured by CIRSA, we will have legal costs. But I think the other thing, as also Mr. Pond alluded to, is some other costs, and it's a cost to our city as far as losing possible development opportunities. And again, I would say the Clear Creek Crossing, otherwise known as Cabela's, also when I knock on doors, is a sore spot in our city. But I do think, again, it's a risk and it's a cost that right now would impact our city and our citizens. Getting to the charter, the city charter, we are held by oath to abide by the city charter, the Constitution, state and federal laws, and right now they're in conflict. So there's also been outcomes that said that a portion of the ballot 300 was unconstitutional to go retroactive. So again, we are still upholding parts of all of our oath because we are meeting this. And I would mirror what Ms. Hoppy had said about cooperation agreements. These are going to come to council when it comes to city taxes, sales taxes, and that is something that we can review as the city council, and also citizens have the right to speak and discuss their concerns at that point. So I will be in favor of the motion to not appeal tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Fitzgerald?
I will also be voting to not appeal this particular decision. The judge, in writing her opinion, her brief, was very clear that state law always trumps local law, even in a home rule city. And she denied this suit on the basis of state law being in conflict with local law. It's also true that there would be at least 1 year delay before this could happen. During that delay, the growth curve that we're currently experiencing is likely to decline. We already have a weak retail market. I don't want to put any impediments at all in the way of this development happening. And remember that if we would, in fact, put this to a vote, a TIF vote, that also would take time, and that also increases the chances that this development could just go up in smoke. My constituents have demonstrated clearly that they want growth in the city. They want growth like, for example, the Sprouts down on 38th and Kipling. They want growth that is going to be exemplified by 38th and Wadsworth. They and everybody else in the city demonstrated the same thing when they voted a tax increase for 4 projects that were oriented towards growth of the city. So yes, it's true that 300 passed. On the other hand, the tax increase also passed, and that people passed that because they wanted improvement for the city. And as my colleague here noted, we stand to lose about $500,000 that we paid to Denver Water to hurry up and do a water project under what is going to be the hook ramp, which we will lose the benefit of, for example, if nothing is going to happen there for at least a year. So I think it would be irresponsible of me to vote any other way except to not appeal. It seems extremely clear that it would be an uphill climb to get a successful resolution to that. I might also add that the judge's brief also clearly addresses the issue of home rule cities, and quotes a number of cases in support of the idea that no matter whether you're home rule or not home rule, state law trumps local law. So again, I will be voting to not appeal.
Mr. Matthews.
I am going to vote that we should appeal the decision of the district judge. A majority of the people in our city voted on 300, and that's the very basis of our whole political system, is that we abide by rule of law and established by majority vote. My other concern with this is that if we refuse to defend 300 on this issue, we are setting a final precedent that probably drives a stake into the heart of 300. Everyone now will be, it will set a precedence that will make even harder in the future for any further 300 objections to be overcome. If we don't fight it now, then we've lost everything, and we've proven to the citizens that their decision to pass an amendment to take power away from us was very well justified. So I will be voting to appeal the decision.
And Ms. Wooden.
I will be voting to not appeal based on advice given to us from our city attorney, and also mirroring and supporting the comments of Janice Hoppy, George Pond, Christy Davis, and Tim Fitzgerald.
Any other comments?
Madam Mayor, Just as a point, I would like to make sure that we restate the motion so that everyone knows that it's a negative and a no is how a yes and no votes will affect everything.
Restate the motion.
Absolutely. I move to direct the city attorney to not appeal the district court order in the Longs Peak Metro District litigation.
Did we have a second on that? Yeah. We already had one? Who was it? Mr. Lee? Was you? Please cast your votes.
Motion carries 5-3 with council members Matthews, Urban, and Duran voting no.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, just for the record, could the city attorney state his next actions?
Next action will be to advise the CIRSA assigned defense counsel that we will not be appealing the case. The notice of appeal, if it were to have been lodged, has to be lodged, I think, within 49 days of the district judge's order. And so I will not be working with CIRSA to file that notice of appeal. Once the 49-day period for filing of a notice of appeal expires, then the district court judge's decision will be final.
All right, any other comments for tonight? I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting. We're adjourned.